Picking chaos. That's a good one.
Yeah.
A good phrase like that could become an epigraph. You never know. I'm interested to hear more what you have to say about epigraphs, since you're so good at using them to help creativity to feed on itself.
I think it's almost like the first piece of a puzzle, perhaps. Okay. And I look at it, and when I'm building something, I'm trying to complete the puzzle of what the epigram represents to me. And I really, it's just, there's something that intrigues me about a certain phrase. This one, which is, if I do say so myself, a very good poem.
Sure.
The epigram's by Dean Young, who is not an easy poet to read because, I don't know, he's extremely creative and whatever. But this says, what would that letter after Z look like? Well, I think you think about that, okay?
Yeah.
So, and I write fast. Something, I'll respond to this, and it'll pretty much be written. Very little rewriting, which may be a bad thing. But so, what would that letter after Z look like? Dean Young. 2 circles to keep us contained. A hook to pull us from deep water. Stars to hide somewhere in the universe. A ski lift to refute life as an uphill battle. A rectangle to hint you are already dead. A coffee pot to wake us up. A black eye that sees troubles ahead. A metronome to adjust heartbeats. A smile for time wasted. A bent thumb asking for a ride. A shoe that says there is no hurry. Lips to warn of oncoming disappointment. A cloud floating over daydreams. A drop of blood where you pricked your finger. A cane to remind you that soon you will be an ancestor. Sunglasses to keep you safely in the dark. Looped exclamation points that leave you hanging. A match to show the extent of your passion. A mirage that reveals how much you missed in life. That's a good poem.
That's a good poem.
It's a very good poem. What I like about it is that all the examples, they're sort of ludicrous or inane or whatever, but there's no repetition. And that stimulates you. What would the letter Z after Z look like? And look at all the things, anybody could write a poem about that if they took the time.
Right.
And I don't know. I think you guys know that I have written a series of poems about the death of C.K. Williams, based on his posthumous book, which came out. And in reading the book, I found some lines that I thought they stimulated me. So I took the line, used it as the epigraph, and then included the line in the body of the poem. I thought originally I like this line, I can use it in 2 ways. And some of the poems are more successful than the others, but that's not really the point as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. But that's just, taking a book of 50 poems and finding 8 or 10 that have something I find useful and using as many as I can. I did a sort of review of a poet who had mental problems. On and off. He was the son of...
That could be any of us.
No, but this was serious stuff. And I used basically the lines from some of his poems and then a comment line underneath of mine. And it was sort of a review of the book of how you would get to know this guy. And it talked about his breakdowns and other things that were unhappy in his life. And I just picked the lines You know, I did that with Stephen Dunn. I was studied with him for a weekend, and I was reading one of his older books from the 70s. And I started, oh, look at this line. Look at the next page. Look at. So I ended up writing a poem based on his lines. The whole poem is lines from this book. And it was coherent. There was unity there for some reason. You know, and I can't explain that. It was, 20 or 25 lines. It wasn't an epic. And I showed it to him, and he was very pleased. You know, so I was pleased. I guess the point being is that you never know where an idea is coming from, or what idea you should grab out of the air and say, hey, I can use this, I can work with this. I know you do that. I think maybe that's all poetry. I don't know. You get an idea about something and you try and make it more than it is, expand on it. He was pleased. If he wasn't pleased, he wouldn't have said, yes, you could show this to the rest of the group.
That's true.
Okay. And it's a compliment. I mean, if somebody did that to me, say, hey, look, I found your poems and look what I did, hey, thanks for taking the time. I mean, why be angry? It would make no sense to me.
Especially coming from Stephen Dunn. I mean, he's looked upon as an important and very good poet. No, and I saw him at a reading downtown at Fergie's, and I said, oh yeah, you remember? Oh yeah, you wrote that poem. His wife, yes, we remember that. So it's a compliment to take the time. In a way, it's like a book review, except it's just 15 or 18 phrases put together. And the coherence amazed me that I could go through a book of 75 pages and find lines from various poems throughout the book and put them together and make a coherent poem out of it. So I haven't done that again though. just once.
But it's a compliment when people read it, let alone write something about it.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, and if I'm just taking a line, using it for an epigraph, so it's basically the same thing, except I'm just doing onesies instead of, a whole group of quotes, excerpts, whatever.